Hey there, in today's video, I'm talking about all the various tools and things that you can use in making art. Now, I'm about 100% sure I have not covered every single thing out there. So definitely leave a comment if you have a favorite tool that I missed for some reason. But I also just kind of talk about why I like them and how I use the different tools. So I hope this gives you kind of an overview of things that maybe you haven't considered or haven't thought about, and different ways that you can use those tools when you're making art. Because it's all about just being creative, exploring, and trying to figure out what it is that you like the best. Just like me, I figured out my paintbrush, I figured out different mark making tools and things that work for me. And I hope that this helps you figure out the same thing for you. So I hope this helps you figure out the different tools that you are interested in, and that's maybe something that you might even want to try that you haven't used before. So without further ado, let's get started. To get started, I thought I would just start with showing you your basic paintbrush. So this can be used, obviously for paint, any kind of paint. I know there are brushes specific to watercolor and specific to oil, but I'm just going to talk about some generic paintbrushes because I don't use paintbrushes like that, and I actually don't do watercolor or oil for the most part, but I know that those are more specific. So we're going to talk generally here today. So my favorite brush, or has been for a long time, is this Filbert with the rounded edge. And I don't know what it is I like about it, but I've loved a Filbert for so many years. It is, I do love a Filbert. And so here's what I'm gonna say when I describe these brushes. These are the brushes I primarily use. There is way more brushes. Go to your art store, you will see 1,000 different brushes in a million different sizes. I'm showing you larger ones because here on camera, I think that makes the most sense. Filbert is one of my favorites. So I'm just showing you the tools that I primarily use and the kinds of brushes I primarily use. The other one is a flat. Now this is a 1-inch flat, which I love this size, and I even like bigger 2-inch flats, or even, it's great. I will say one of the things I would suggest is using a brush that you think is bigger than the area warrants. For example, what happens is, I'm going to grab a small one here. We tend to use a teeny tiny like this. Oh, teeny tiny, you're so precious. And the reason it is because we're painting so little. But this makes us be bold. A 1-inch on a substrate, wow. You've got to be bold, and you also are taking a risk versus a teeny tiny little 1/4 inch or whatever size that is. I would highly recommend that you have a few larger brushes just for the sake of being a little bit more bold. It will keep you looser in general. So that's just a side note. That has nothing to do with the tools. That's just my own suggestion. The other brush I use a lot is this. It's called a round, and these typically they have a longer bristle, and then they come to a point at the end, and they're just great. I think watercolor use these a lot, as they do, I think, maybe the mop. The mop is also one I use a lot, and I use it often for a wash. I get it because it holds a lot of water, and so I really do like a wash brush. The other brush I wanted to show you or talk about was this. It's called a scrubber. I have it in a bunch of different sizes. It's like really strong and really tough, and you can get in there and it scrubs. It's what it's called, is a scrubber. Anyway, this one I haven't used, and so I wanted to show you because they can get kind of beat up, but they can take a beating. They're very sturdy, strong brushes. They're not for delicate work, for sure. I will say, I love the Simply Simmons brand. It's very affordable, and I would highly recommend it if you're just looking for a decent brush or set of brushes, because I feel like they tend to be more affordable than some of the other brands, and they hold up really well. I abuse my brushes, and by that I mean I leave them in water, I use them in all kinds of materials, and they seem to rebound with they do quite well. So anyway, these are the brushes. These are the types of brushes I primarily use, obviously in a whole bunch of different sizes. And like I said before, I would highly recommend working with a larger brush that you think you should be using. Next up are the Catalyst Wedge. I love my Catalyst Wedge so much. I have this little container, and I have different kinds, and I do not use any of them as much as just the basic Catalyst Wedge. It is soft and it's not soft. It's silicone. It's pliable but hard. I don't even know how to describe it. I have 2 of them, and then this one is a little bit smaller size. I love them. So then I thought, oh, if I love these so well, I would love these other ones. I do not love the ones that have the shape. I just don't use them as much. It's fine. Sometimes you buy things and you just aren't sure. But I find that if I'm going to make texture in my paint or in my whatever I'm making, I tend to use different tools for that. So you don't know until you try. And then the other thing that I like second to the Catalyst Wedge, similar but different, are these Bondo scrapers. And they come in, they're very inexpensive if you want to give them a try. They are good for making, you can make lines in your art. It scrapes. It's really good when you're doing collage, to scrape out all the air bubbles and things like that. And this big size is amazing. So these are another thing that I would highly recommend. And it's a great tool for just all kinds of different art making. Similar to that are these color shapers, and I love them. I actually bought a new set, I don't know, maybe last summer, and just because I actually do, you can see this one, I don't know if you can see that, it has a couple notches taken out in them. They have this the tip can get ruined. So, you obviously should show some care with them, but I use these a lot. Obviously, you can see the love that I give them, and they are fairly affordable too. So I would highly recommend the color shapers for smoothing. It's good for smoothing out paint. It's good for smoothing out collage. It's good for spreading paint. It gives just a different effect that even in the Catalyst Wedge gives a completely different effect from that. And in here, I also just have this spatula that I often use. It's actually it's a catalyst also, for getting paint out of big tubs of paint out, dollops of paint out for my palette. So you could also use it on your canvas or your substrate or whatever, but I tend to use it just as a tool for getting paint out of a jar. So these are really fabulous to use. Next up are the palette knives. Okay, I can't tell you enough. You can kind of see, I'll put them at an angle here. I have a lot of different sizes and shapes. I will say I use the bigger ones more than the smallish ones. Just, that one still has stuff on it. But they all get used and they all kind of have a different purpose. And it's another way to spread paint. It's a great way to mix paint. It's a great way to put on collage. I love a palette knife. It gives a completely different effect. So another way to put on paint is with the brayer. And I have a variety of different brayers here, a couple different sizes. And then I also have, these are just, I think for house painting, and it has a foam on it, but I've used it over and over again. And so it's a little bit harder, but it is another way to put paint down. Often these are used using a jelly plate, and then you just roll the paint on. People use that all the time. I do have video about the jelly plate. Not that I'm any pro, because trust me, there are so many really great jelly print people out there. So I would Google that if you're interested in it. But I do use the brayers even on other substrates than just the jelly plate. Another tool that I use a lot are my mark making tools. And these actually, if you can kind of see them, they are primarily pottery tools. These look new, and they are because I bought another set because they get kind of gunked up on the ends and they're fairly affordable. So I just was like, I'll just buy a whole nother set. This is how they end up looking, like this. And then the tip is so caked with paint that I can't hardly use it. So I would definitely, if you like making marks into your paint and creating lots of texture, these are great tools for using that, and they're very affordable as well. Now, I will say, if you have a skewer or any other broken, like this is a twig, there's all kinds of other tools you can use, as well as, you don't have to go buy something. But what I like about these are the sharp, or not, well, they are, some of them are sharp. This one is a sharp end, but they have just lots of different edges to them. And I find you can get different effects. And the paint does typically wipe off if you take the time to wipe it off. They don't all have to end up looking like this. So this is another great tool that I use quite a lot. I would be remiss in not mentioning just a water bottle. It's great for all kinds of different things. Activating charcoal, just spritzing or your paint. Sometimes on my palette, I'll spritz my paint so it lasts a little bit longer while I'm leaving the room to go do something else. So anyway, a water bottle is awesome if you have one of those, and probably you just have one around, or you could clean out a bottle that had cleaner in it or something like that and use that as well. Okay, so I have a few last random kind of supplies that I feel like are in the tool category. I have scissors, and both of these are Tim Holtz scissors, and I gotta say, I love his scissors. They're very durable. They're a little more expensive, but they are amazing. So if you want to invest in a good scissor, I have 2 different lengths of his, and I would highly recommend them. They last a long time. They stay sharp. They cut through anything. They're just really great scissors. Obviously, a paper towel is good. I actually try to use rags more than paper towels for the mere fact that I don't want to create more garbage, and I do not want to. I'm all about, sustainability and not throwing more things away. So I do use a paper towel, but I don't use it as much probably as other people. I tend to use up my paint by putting it on other pieces of paper or in an art journal, every last bit of it, even just scraping down with my color shaper to get it all off. And I use the paper towel really just as in a more limited way. But that it is a tool, and it is something that I do use, as is the rag to wipe things up. Often I dab water off of my paintbrushes on here, and obviously I clean up with a rag, that kind of thing. Another thing I wanted to mention is I actually have a bunch of these cute little glass. I don't even know what they are. I found them at a thrift store, and I use them. Sometimes I want to decant, I guess that's a great way to put it, different mediums in here, and then I can have it sitting out versus in this glass container, which is super easy to clean afterwards. Then to have it just in another anyway. I like these little glass containers. So if you have some random containers that you like or you don't, if you don't like, then you can use to decant sometimes like your matte medium or gesso or something if you wanted it in a smaller container. The last thing I want to mention is my beloved palettes. So when I'm not making a video, I use these palettes, and honestly, after a while, when the paint builds up, this paint will eventually peel up. And I don't know if I can even show you how that works. Yeah, this is not deep, not thick enough yet. But when it gets a little bit thicker, you just kind of, maybe this will work here. I don't know if you care to see it. But anyway, it kind of will peel up in big chunks. That's not very big. But so I have 2 different kinds of plastic, and then this is one, these are like little baking tins that I found at Costco, and I thought they would work, and they worked great, and the paint does eventually peel up off of those as well. So those are all the tools that I would, that I want to suggest that you use or you consider. If you have any tool ideas, I would love to hear if you have other ideas or options for using paint or other mediums. I know that there's a variety of tools out there, and I don't know all of them, but I definitely, these are the ones that I use the most, and I wanted to go over with you and demonstrate. Oh, one last thing. I always have a container of water, and of course I don't have it here right at this minute, so I throw my paintbrushes in there after I get every bit of paint off of them so that they're resting in water until I can get them cleaned. So anyway, that is it for getting down to basics with your tools. I hope that you found that helpful. And if you have any questions or any other things that you'd like me to explain further, please, as always, just leave a question or comment below, and I will get back to you on that. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.